What's good, everyone? You're listening to WKNC 88.1 FM HD1 Raleigh. We are a student-run nonprofit radio station based out of North Carolina State University.
I'm DJ Off Belay, and this is the Altrap Pipeline Deepcuts, where we interview some of the up-and-coming talent out of the alt-rap underground. Today, I'm here with Kwame Adu. What's good, man? How you doing?
Um, I've been doing all right. It's a lot going on. I like to
Yeah.
think,
Mm-hmm.
so I've been pretty busy, but it's good stress. Better than
Yeah.
bad stress.
Yeah. I like to be busy. Better than having nothing to do, I guess.
Yeah.
So, Kwame, for some of our viewers that don't know you or haven't heard your music, maybe you give yourself like a little intro. What sort of type of music you make? How long you've been making music, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Me as Kwame Adu. I'm a New Jersey native, born and raised. Uh, I've been making hip hop and rapping maybe since 2010, and just professionally recording it since 2014. Um, Yeah, I rap, I make beats, I engineer. A lot of my a lot of my sound is like I think it's like poetic. It can be very poetic, but I like to keep it high energy or low energy, like super, like nothing in between.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, a lot of that, very very much poetic, very much storyteller esque. I don't know if I'm a storyteller per se, but I like to paint pictures in what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think poetic is a good way to put how a lot of your songs come off, especially because you have really short form songs. They're all really, just sort of short and punchy. I feel like there's not a lot of fluff to them. It's really nice dent, especially like I don't know, even just your EPs that you put out like under KWAMZAY with Zay. They're just like 5 songs, but they're still just so dense. It sounds like I listened to a whole album almost.
Yeah, those are crazy. Like honestly, I didn't. They were all so like in the moment that I didn't even know what I was doing. I don't know if they knew what he was doing. It's crazy just making that.
Yeah, so those were sort of just like a product of like one or a few days of just like tapping in, and it wasn't like it sounds like you weren't really trying to make an album when you did that. Is that sort of like how you normally make your stuff? You just let what happens, or do you sort of have like some sort of driving? I don't know. Like, before you make a song or an EP? Is it sort of you just go in and see whatever happens, or do sometimes you're like, oh, I want to make a song about this, and then you start?
I think if I'm speaking like for myself and like my music as a solo artist, I think I tend to be more intentional.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll start out pretty raw, and I'll like to flesh it out into something more solid. Um, when it comes to a lot of what Zay and I have released under KWAMZAY, uh, it was very much like that was super like I'll say unintentional, like super in the moment, um, really just getting off our skill set, like just showing what we could do, you know. It's not like super super planned out or anything. We just kind of black out and see what happens. Even the first KWAMZAY EP, Motherland, took a weekend to record,
Mm.
and then just a week to finish overall. You know.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. I feel like maybe once you get sort of something like that, you don't want to overthink it. You just want to tap in. So you said you sort of touched on in the beginning. You've been making music all the way since back in like 2010. Um, like, how have you sort of changed how you've made music back then versus now?
Well, I'm turning 25 at the end of the year. So when I started rapping, I was 12.
Mm.
So my entire perspective as a human being has already been like changed like 10 times over. And I've traveled to different locations and met different sort of people. And even the music that I listened to back then on a day to day basis, I wasn't even listening to music on a day to day basis when I started making music. So it's like the fact that what I'm doing now sounds like what it is, I think is just just a result of experience. Like
Hmm.
if you look back far enough, you could still see small parts of who I would be now in my old music when I'm like 14. But um, I think the biggest change was just just having a sense of experience and just growing into being myself. The music kind of just followed up right after.
Yeah. Where are you from? Do you feel like that has sort of an impact on your sound, like people you're surrounded with? I don't know if being in, you said LA or West Coast, I don't know if that's new for you. You've always been there?
I've been in LA for on and off like 5 years,
Hmm.
um, but I've mostly been in New Jersey, and I spent some time in central Pennsylvania. So I think and then on top of that, my family's from Ghana. Like I'm a first generation American,
Hmm.
so it definitely affected my sound to where my influences weren't directly from the same places I know a lot of people for them to be, at least in the sense of like how I was raised. Like I wasn't in a music environment. Like I appreciated music when I had it, of course, like anyone else, but it wasn't like I had. There's a lot of music I didn't listen to until I was like 19.
Mm.
Lots of hip hop I didn't listen to. Lots of R&B, soul, jazz. Like a lot of my references were from like anime and video game scores and TV show scores, like real specific stuff. Not like songs and albums and EPs. I wasn't even listening to an album all the way through to like high school. So,
Yeah. I feel like I kind of relate to that too. There's definitely a period where I sort of like, I don't know, not that I like took music super seriously because I'm not really making music, but I sort of there's like a moment where it clicked, like back in
yeah,
2016. I'm like, oh, like albums are where it's at. Like it's like a whole movie, like a little contained universe.
yeah, true body of work. So
Hmm.
a lot of that, and I think where the location even comes into play is just like being from New Jersey. I think there's a certain sound that came out of the East Coast that can still kind of be recognized. There's a specific sound in like Philly, and even when the KWAMZAY stuff started popping up, people said like, "Oh, this gives off like Jay-Z," but I'm like,
Mm.
it could, but maybe I don't know. I just have an accent. Like that's like it's just shit like, oh, my bad. It's
Are
things
you
like
good?
that it's things that like that I think my location really came into play. Just real specific stuff. My accent, um, who I was around based off my location, and how that was like a means to like not have that much music around me. So yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like a lot of your influences in terms of like location and your upbringing are a lot less like intentional. Are there sort of like some influences that you're trying to intentionally like invoke with your new sounds, maybe with your solo stuff or Kwamze in particular? Like, yeah.
Um, Not as much intentional like influence. It's kind of come back to like a circular point. Like when I started making music, like I didn't really sound like anybody, and I didn't really sound. I don't think my rapping itself was that great because I didn't have a point of reference for a really long time. But when I started getting into it, um, bigger influences for me were like within hip hop and like just music in itself was like a lot of Kanye West, a lot of Earl Sweatshirt.
Mm-hmm.
I would really listen to Isaiah Rashad a lot. Um, I like a lot of what Khalees did and Solange,
Ooh, nice.
and Solange's later years and whatnot. Um, I think sonically everything came from maybe I think sonically I can be more intentional, like production wise. I had started making beats 2016, got off and got back during the pandemic, so I was really intentional. Oh, intentional. I was really intentional. Well, I said it again. That's crazy. I received intentional influences from things like drum and bass and house and
Oh
dance
yeah.
music, just real rhythmic, electronic stuff. I've always been gravitated to those sort of things, and jazz. I've been gravitated to like a lot of that, psych rock, like just real. I think I like to be more intentional about what the soundscape is versus like how I'm rapping at this point.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I really enjoy the lane that you're in, like you and Diz and Wabo and people like that. Such a good. I don't know. Diz didn't really want to admit it. I feel like you guys have such a good sound where if I hear even just like a sample, like I'm like, oh, this would be perfect for like Wabo or Kwamzay. It's like you guys have sort of already etched a spot in my mind where I'm like, this is the sound that they make, and like I don't. I was at Young Wabo's listening party for Mirage, and when I heard
Mm.
you come on Moron, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. This is amazing. Um, it's so cool that you guys have already sort of cut out like a little lane.
Yeah, man. It's cool. I think it just came with what happened. Like I think Zay and I both appreciated that sort of sound, for what it was. Like, as long as we've heard it when we were teens, like, I was listening to things like, um, I was listening to MF Doom a lot, and like
Mm.
Earl Sweatshirt's one of my favorite like artists. I think more so now than before. It's funny enough. It's something we just exist in, like almost like a passion project. Because when you go to me and Zay's actual interpersonal stuff and the stuff we're gonna be like releasing, it's not so much of that because that's not. It's like there's a way to put it. It's interesting because it's just like a technique. Like us doing Kwamzay is pure technique in the sense where that lane exists based off of just things that we just like and listen to
Mm-hmm.
versus it being as interpersonal as it would have been before. So it was really interesting, kind of like, especially when you hear my older solo stuff. Like not all of it really sounds like any of that,
Yeah.
um, just because that's not what we were on like actively. And that goes back to me saying like Zay and I weren't really intentional when we made Kwamzay. It was just funny that it even just happened that way. We would joke about making like fake Stones Throw projects when we were like 2018 and stuff. It was pretty interesting. It worked out really well too. But yeah, it was interesting. You're like, I guess they gonna see us as like the art jazz sample guys for a little bit. Okay, cool, cool, cool. I like this stuff. I like
Yeah, I
it.
feel like it's definitely. I don't know how I want to say it, but just when you don't put as much pressure on like needing success or like needing this amount of whatever and just allowing yourself to like freely express. I feel like just even like not even just being genuine in your lyrics, but just genuine in your art. I feel like that comes across to people.
Mhm. I
Like
agree.
you're not really trying to create a sound that you don't listen to or like be someone you're not. It's just like you're just sort of expressing. Is there like sort of certain not like message, but is there a way that you want people to take your art or like how do you want people to interpret it?
I
Or maybe a better question is like what do you want people to get out of listening to your music?
I think it's more so. I think what I want people to get out of my music is to understand for themselves who they are, and maybe for that to be like okay, like wherever they are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's not something I'm making a conscious effort to do, but I think when you make music or any form of art and it's like a direct reflection of yourself, it's like watching somebody do something that you wanted to do. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like a watch and learn thing. Like I think it's always been very watch and learn. Like this is my life. This is how I'm living it. This is me being upset. This is me being mad. This is me doing what I can to get better. Like I'm putting all that in the music, and I do that all the you know what I mean, I do that all the time. So with any hope people would do the same just from listening to it and understanding who they are, you know, relating to me in those ways, understanding that like they don't have to be alone in certain situations, just stuff like that. You know,
Hmm.
stuff that just comes along with expressing yourself. You just want to be connected to people. You want people to understand or at least respect what you're doing. And I would only ask for people to express and respect themselves the same way I do for myself when I can.
Mm. Yeah, I feel like yeah, that's just wanting people to be genuine and not necessarily force things. Um,
Yeah.
as a like sort of underground artist, you could say, or I guess not, just like yeah, it must be hard to sort of manage expectations in terms of like goal setting or milestones. How do you set like I don't know. How do you view milestones as someone that's still early in their career? Like do you put a lot of emphasis on like streams or shares, or is it more like your art?
Mm,
I don't know.
it's to a point. It has to be both. It
Mm-hmm.
has to be. You have to maintain that balance. The thing that people don't really say it often, or as far as I know, it doesn't seem like people say it often. Like the profession I exist in is both art and entertainment. You know, they're not mutually exclusive. So me being an artist, my job is to express myself in a medium and not go crazy in the everywhere in between doing that.
Mm-hmm.
While me being an entertainer means I'm gonna have to literally keep in mind like performing and like my audience and just certain things, and that's where a lot of the milestones come in from. So I think I like to set my milestones. I like to have them, but not really put too much weight on them. If I've been telling myself that I'm gonna be like superstar, like if I've been telling myself I'm gonna reach these certain things since I was 16, and I'm starting to see certain things now, like it's it's more so that like just keeping in mind what I already knew I could have done and not letting that get to me, whether it's for better or worse, because that could just, either put pressure on myself or make myself overconfident in what I'm doing. Um,
Mm.
so just just being mindful, just being aware. I'll just make some, like, if we're talking about like streaming or Grammys, like, not acting like they aren't milestones. These aren't necessarily easy things to do as an entertainer, but just keeping in mind that like I don't have to change my art for the sake of achieving milestones, for the sake of like going viral or like winning awards or getting paid, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if that answered the question.
No, that definitely does. And you even touched on something I was going to bring up after with how you said you don't necessarily want to change your sound to go viral or like, yeah, cater to this like social media audience. I mean, that's how I found you was through like I said, people like Diz and Wob when I found them on like Instagram and TikTok. But that form is so like it's making everything shorter and shorter and songs are like catchier and louder. Um, it must be hard to try to balance like a, being able to like appeal to the audience you want to appeal to, but not like feel like you're giving up.
Yeah, dude, it's pretty crazy. Like honestly, I even didn't have a TikTok till like this year, and I still don't use it. Like
Mm.
the account that's mine, I don't use it, and I think knowing that there's a lot of people out there you could reach out to can make you feel crazy when you're not like making an active effort every day to like get this stuff. Like I want as many people to see, like knowing that you can, but you're not because you just genuinely don't want to. You don't want to compromise on who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it can make me feel a little crazy in that regard, but you know, it's a big world. There's billions of people. Like, it's the same thing as I was saying before. Like, eventually, like, I knew that there would be people who are going to listen because there's just so many people to have come across this. I don't need to maximize the amount of ears to listen, because if I keep making the stuff and it all sounds great and it all sounds like me, there's going to be plenty of people who are going to come across it, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely a good point. 7 billion people. There's definitely gonna be somebody out there.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like that approach also might have its own benefits too, because it allows you maybe to experiment more, to where you don't necessarily have to release like a commercial song. I'm blanking on the title of it, but you have the one like you said, drum and bass track, where it's just like the breakdown, the drum breakdown, and there's no lyrics at all. That's one of my favorite tracks.
I'm Still Alive. It's
Yeah.
called I'm Still Alive.
Yeah, I mean, just stuff like that. I feel like it's super nice to be able to take, not that that's like a big chance, but you know what I mean? Like, break out of a formula.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the idea of what's even commercial has just been so blurred, and like what seems to be conventional, like it's all starting to blur. So just consider, and on top of the fact that even what's commercial and conventional like changes like all the time. So there's no purpose in, you can only consider so much of that, you know, like before you're just compromising on yourself. So I'd rather just not even think about it at all and just work with whatever just so happens to seem more, you know, feasible to listen to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I feel like as an artist, you're definitely not afraid of collaborations. You sort of touched on it a little bit, but like is there a different approach you take to your solo stuff versus collaborations that's not just sort of like working with another artist, if that makes sense?
Like in regards to,
I don't know. Like, do you take your collaborations less seriously than your solo stuff? Or I feel like a lot of the collaborations you do have, you like put names to them, like KWAMZAY and Driving Indoors. Do you do that
yeah.
sort of just, I don't know, because it's cool to have like another thing outside of Kwame Adu exist? Or is it sort of, you want to take it more seriously so you make it permanent?
Nah, it's just fun. Like, it's just fun. Like, when it comes to, like, you got KWAMZAY, you got Driving Indoors, and I have, just songs across with, like, a lot of my friends, like, more consistently than others. It's kind of the opposite. Like, Driving Indoors existed because me and Frank the Fourth, the other, like we were high school best friends. He's practically my brother, and it's the same thing with Zay. Like, me and Zay have been like really, 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 really. He's one of my closest friends right now. Like, he's practically my brother. So we're just, it's just kind of fun. It's kind of opposite. It's like, yeah, not wanting to be so serious, and that kind of leads it in that direction where it like solidifies itself. It becomes its own unit, especially based off of what I'm doing. Like I said, Kwamzay is very much like technical. It's not as interpersonal all the time. Like, you know, so Kwamzay exists in itself as a whole other thing. Especially even with Zay, like the beats that Zay's making or that I'm making, like they're not. Zay doesn't. Zay solo stuff isn't gonna like feel the same way, like almost at all. It might have the same feeling, but sonically, it's like just a whole different thing. So it's like that. Like, um, our collaborations in those regards are just, yeah, super raw, and they develop into something. A lot of the collaborations I do with like just other artists generally, I think it's the same thing. Like, you know, when you get, I think maybe with other artists, like maybe if I'm just doing collaborative stuff, it could be maybe more serious in that regard. A lot of times people will like, you know, ask me to like um do something on their work as of lately, you know. So it's like there's a level of intention that's already being brought to me to follow up on. So I think in that regard, you could say it's more serious when it's just like a lot of one-off stuff. Um, but when it's like deeper and like super collaborative, like group stuff, I think that stuff is never really that serious. I think that's also why like a lot of collab projects by like bigger artists never really sound as good, or like they're never received as well the same way, because most of the time those really 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 like close friends, like it just seems kind of arbitrary. Like I think about like doing a whole project on some rapper shit with like most of my homies, it would just kind of be like weird. Like, why am I at your house just making music? Like, what are we doing right now? Like, turn
Mm.
the switch on. Like, it's like that, you know? Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, you sort of talked about it a little. I kind of wanted to jump back, I guess. With sort of like setting your own milestones. Recently, you've had Jeanine hit 1 million streams on Spotify. Um, how do you feel? Like, how did you sort of feel about that? What is like, oh, this was a long time coming, or you're sort of surprised that this was the track that did it, or not that did it, but you know what I mean? Like, this was the one that reached it first.
If we're talking Jeanine specifically, I did not think Jeanine would be like my biggest song. I didn't think it almost didn't end up on like streaming platforms, like in general. Like, you know, I didn't take, like, I didn't, yeah, I was super surprised for that one to be the one. It's definitely one of my more, maybe even my most genuine like song too. You know, so looking back, I could have maybe seen it, but maybe because it was so genuine, like I'm not looking at it so much from the outside in to know that this could have really been like my biggest song to date.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah,
Um,
but even then, like in the bigger scheme of things, I've always like been like, yeah, we're gonna get here. So when we did, when Avia and I had reached 1 million, I was like, you know, this is a blessing. Like we made it. We made it long enough to see this thing that we thought would have happened. It's like
mhm.
that.
Yeah. Um, what do you see like right now in terms of like what do you see as your bottleneck in terms of success? Like is it sort of the time you have to spend making music, the money that you'd have to spend for like tours and stuff, or just like the reach, or do you think it's just time? Like what do you think is the bottleneck?
Oh, what's kind of like taking me to the.
I guess I mean like what do you think is not necessarily holding you back, but what do you think is like what you're waiting? I don't know how to put
I
it
see what you
like
mean.
yeah.
Nah, like I think the bottleneck. I think what's maybe important in taking me to a next step. If you ask me, I think I just want to get on maybe just like a larger outreach, like a bigger. It seems like there's a lot of people who are interested in the music, but the thing that changes for all artists is like being on the road,
Mm,
and going on tour and seeing like, you know, even if it is like 20 or 30 people at a time, seeing a bunch of people who know what you're saying in your songs. I think that's like the next thing, like just being on the road to really tell myself that like, oh, this is a real thing, you know. Especially when people say like streams do this and streams do that. It's usually in the realm of like, you know, it's still intangible. Like there's 1 million streams on Jeanine, but it's like that's a lot of plays for a lot of people who I've never met in my life. Like, you know, so I think that like the the finishing factor would be just tour, just going on the road, because that also means money. That
mm,
also means seeing the people who appreciate my work, and I think both of those things are important to maybe just to continue what you're doing. You know, at a certain point, I'm gonna still make music regardless. I was making music when I had nothing, but um, it definitely helps when you know people who you've never met who really like your work that much, and it definitely helps when you don't have to worry about bills. So
Oh yeah,
I'll
yeah,
say that much.
yeah. I feel like you've had a few, like a decent amount of live performances. How was your last show, like compared to other ones?
Uh, like my last show.
I don't know if it was your last show. The last one that I saw was the when your little double EP came out, the prayer one, silly little prayer.
Oh yeah
I don't
yeah
know if
yeah yeah.
I don't know if you've had some since then.
I think I had one or
Mhm.
two. Nah, it was one.
Well, I
I
guess
think it's
like
about to
just
come
in
out.
general, recently, how have they been going? Have you noticed like a change in your live shows, or are you still just it's a lot about
Oh,
like outreach and stuff?
nah, yeah. It's definitely. It was really cool. It was definitely rep work. I think Los Angeles being a city of like people, like it's a city known for entertainment, but because entertainment is like a purely like people ran people ran not the same way other places are, but um like my homie Taylor refers to it as like city of referral. Like so it's like the more shows that I did and a lot of them were in LA, the more people happen to know me as, Kwame who raps and his music is fire. KWAMZAY that he does with his homies, Zay, like it's fire. Like go to a show. I have people all the time who be like, "Yo, bro, like I always seen you around, but that's crazy. Like I didn't. Your music is fire. I didn't even really like know that. I really didn't hear it." And a lot of that came just throughout the summer, just doing a lot of shows, getting reps off, people knowing me as somebody who has a show on Friday, I have a show on Monday. Like it was like that.
Yeah.
So that was one of the bigger changes externally. Internal change. I've always been a good performer, but maybe this just like helped, just sharpen the sword more. I'll say that. Kind of like contain any raw energy I had on the stage and really like refine it. I think a lot of that too.
Yeah, I mean, the little video you put out for a silly little prayer is definitely very. It's a good way to put it. Like you said, refined. Um, it's just a cool way to. I mean, for someone like me, I'm all the way in North Carolina. I'm not going to be able to go to a show in LA, but it's still sort of releasing stuff outside of just the music to bring attention in.
Yeah.
That's one of my bigger like favorite parts about music. Like I said, I really like albums and all the stuff like surrounding albums. It's really cool.
Full
Um,
length stuff. Yeah.
yeah. Um, what's sort of like the roadmap for the next few months?
I'm gonna be releasing a bigger body of work closer to the end of the year. For my as myself as Kwame. Um, so that going into next year, you know, still gonna be plenty of music going into next year. Plenty of music just in the next year. That's not really gonna change. Maybe just the goal is bigger like just next step stuff. I mean, being on the road,
Mm-hmm.
being outside of SoCal to perform more often. Um, yeah, maybe some music that's like not so much what people expect out of me.
Mm.
Especially going back to the Kwamze, like just the idea of the sound. The sound has put people in a position to see me a certain way, which is never really an issue. But I think because we're all growing at the same time in different paces. Um, I want people to see what I can really do. Like there's things that I haven't done yet that I have that people haven't got to hear yet. So it's stuff like that. Stuff like that. A lot of stuff that people might not expect out of me. A lot of stuff that maybe people will see me like physically next year. Very
Oh,
likely. Very very likely.
that's really interesting. I feel like it's pretty. I mean, from the outside, I guess you said you've been making music for a long time. I guess just from my perspective, only found you recently. It's kind of jarring to hear like, oh, I'm gonna do something, just switch it up now. It's not that it's a bad thing. I think it's really smart. Like you said, you don't want, like, people have already started to know you for a certain sound through KWAMZAY. It's kind of interesting that you're taking an intentional choice to like break out of that, even as it's just starting to sort of like kick up and get you more notoriety. Like, it's very bold.
It's it's I won't say that it's like my driving factor moving forward, more so than it's more so just showing more dimensions of myself, because that sound still exists. There's more Kwamzay, I'll say that much.
Okay.
Like, there's more Kwamzay like that, and even within my solo stuff, like that feeling, that same feeling still exists. Like, I'm gonna be hip hop, like I'm hip hop, like, in the way that people kind of see it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I think my job as an artist to show is that the way that people feel when they hear the stuff I have now can still be felt um, through other means, through other instruments, through other sounds, through other samples, through other genres,
Mm.
even if it's like genre being arbitrary, it kind of is all one and the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a lot of that. I'll say that much more. I wouldn't want to make it sound like I'm stopping. I'm not doing one thing more than it is just showing more things along with the thing I can already do.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm getting what you're saying. In terms of this new solo album, are you gonna depart from the short form KWAMZAY EP? Is it gonna be more like, when you say album, I guess, what are you thinking with album?
The thing that I'm releasing is like it's more than like 4 or 5 songs. It's more than that, and it's a lot more than rap. It's a lot more. Yeah, it's a lot more than rap. It's a lot more than chops. It's a lot more than. It's longer than 10 minutes. I'll tell you that much. Like, it's a full body of work. It encapsulates everything that's made up to be me, up until now, or at least as of now.
Okay, that's pretty exciting to hear, because I was actually surprised when I first found you and I went to your Spotify page. You have like a pretty deep catalog, so it's exciting to hear that like a lot of that stuff from down there is probably gonna resurface, or not resurface, but Kwame is gonna be doing more Kwame stuff. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's always nice when you find a new artist and then you go to their Spotify page or their Apple Music page or whatever, and you just see like album, more from the
Yeah.
artist appears on. It's like, oh, nice.
Like, oh, you gotta eat. Like, yeah. No, yeah, same way. Yeah. Um, you know, it's a good feeling, and it's cool. It's cool me being the one making it, just like knowing that the stuff before me can get appreciated for what it is. Whether or not like people like it or not. I think if to a level like me understanding that people like me as Kwame Adu, and understanding that Kwame Adu as the artist, this myth, this thing like has existed before then. Like, it's really cool for people to kind of see it and appreciate that. You know, because who would I? It was only so much I could have guessed when I was making that stuff from before. That I just knew I'd be somewhere. I didn't know how. I couldn't have, known where I'd be in that present moment. I just known it'd be far. So.
Yeah, and that probably, like, that confidence with your older work probably just comes from being genuine as you're making it. You don't really have to worry about like people finding you out or anything like that.
Yeah.
With this new project coming out, do you want to sort of like give away any information, like title, maybe some collaborations?
All right, yeah, I'll say this much. It's called Shinji's album. Shinji, it's Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
It's a protagonist from a particular anime. For those who do know it, they'll kind of get it already. And I think People who don't kind of get into it once I start like rolling stuff out. But it's called Shinji's album. Um, it's a little under a half hour long. A lot of the production is me. Got a lot of help from some homies, but yeah, it's mostly me. There are some features. Um, there are some features, but a lot of it is like homegrown. Like a lot of my like homies, like
Mm-hmm.
because the album was made. The album was made and almost near finished. The album was made summer of last year, and I practically finished it summer of this year. So
Mm-hmm.
um, it's very much like before the KWAMZAY stuff started taking off, before Jeanine, before like me and Aviad stuff started taking off. Like it's super genuine. It's super genuine. Yeah. Um, yeah. So I'll say that much. It's very interpersonal. It's about me. It's
Yeah,
about
and
me.
I've sort of gathered the vibe just from talking to you this long. Like, not the type of person to just throw on a feature to try to get publicity or just because their name is big. Definitely, like, sounds like all the collaborations and all the work you put into it is super intentional and more for the sound than anything.
Yeah, I mean, if you're right, if it's about being intentional, like I can only do so much with like having another artist on a body of work because I'm not opposed to featuring. I'm not opposed to reaching out to people for the sake of like them fitting what I'm already doing, but I think for that same reason, if I have an album that reflects on like who I was, like I'm not expecting this person who's signed to a major label to be on it, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't see anything wrong with either. Just like we said, it's just about why you're doing it, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. In terms of, hmm. So you have the album coming out in November. You said you wanted to sort of get more shows, hopefully outside of Southern California. With your recent shows, what's sort of like the vibe been? Have people been taking the music well? Have you been like unexpectedly people? Is it like is the reaction like unexpected or anything like that?
I think, yeah, it's pretty unexpected. You never know who's gonna show up because me being in LA for a certain amount of time, like I have like a lot of acquaintances and people who might just know of me, even if I
Mm-hmm.
don't know them. So you never really know who's gonna show up, And that's not to say people do or don't, depending on the show. But yeah, I've had a lot of shows with Zay where it's like we're making like 10 new 10. There's like 10 new people who are like fans on the spot. Like that's like out of the blue. When we did the Modern Nation Jam Fest and we did a set and we opened up for Mavi.
Mm.
Like we were one of the sets underneath the Mavi headlining. That was like people were attracted to the sound. They kind of take it in that same regard, so that like blew us up a lot. Or
Yeah,
like we'll
it's
do
a
shows
definitely
that
good
are,
fit.
yeah, you feel me. So it's like stuff like that, or like shows that are very hip hop orientated. Um, you usually expect a lot of people to be like, okay, like we're doing this thing that the people who are coming to these shows like. So you never know who's gonna go show up, but in those regards, you're gonna expect somebody to leave, like I'll say a fan, and if it's more so, maybe something more broad, maybe if it seems more one-off, like performances by Kwamzay and these other people for this like grander thing, that's when you're like, okay, like we're gonna have a good time. Like we're here to have a good time. It depends on the intention of the show. Are we the help or are people coming to listen?
Yeah, that makes sense. Talked about
Yeah.
that um on another interview. Like, definitely would be a vibe shift if you're the headliner versus the opener versus just like you're at an art gallery just performing in the corner.
Yeah, exactly. And you could still. The most important part is that you have to be the same, like, for all three of those. Otherwise, like, I'm not even gonna say otherwise, but like most of the people who reach a certain level of success or a certain level of notoriety, it comes from things like that. Um, if you're able to like rap your heart out or perform your heart out, and there's like two people, then you're bound to take off when it's time to be in front of 2,000 people. Like it's really just what it's always been,
Hmm.
what it seems to be. I'll say.
Yeah. Um, Sort of reaching the end of the questions I had prepared. Is there anything you want to talk about?
Um, Listen, man, we got some new Zay, all caps. Some new Zay. Some new Zay is coming. All my homies are coming with something like crazy. Like the people who I've known for years and years before like any of this stuff popped off, like they're coming through and they're doing some crazy things. So, and I'll be around for a lot of that. So, you know, I'm personally excited for that. Along with my own stuff, I'm very excited for what my friends have coming. Zay, Willis, who's my favorite color,
Mm.
my close friend Dan Sully, who's also one of my closest producer friends, um, Keem the Cipher. Like I just have my homie Vanessa Fleur Taylor. That's my dog. Like we just lots of things. Lots of things are coming. Lots of things are coming. It'll be a movement. Era Productions. We just that's my homies out here too. Just released a TV show. Got an acting role in it. Like it's just
Oh, nice.
a
Yeah.
lot of cool things are coming. A lot of cool things are coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of outside of music, do you have anything like any other forms of expression or any like hobbies that you're super into?
I was acting in the private show in the limited series called Private Show. In the limited series called Private School.
Mm.
Um, Directed, written by my good friends Jared Bishop and Santino McNaughton at Aroy Productions. That's been like one of the bigger things I've done so far. It's a beautiful series. It's already out. It's on YouTube and it's on Amazon Prime. So that's that. That's something I've gotten into acting, um, and mostly that. Mostly that. I like to just do other things like read manga. That's my other incredible talent. just read and play Smash Brothers.
Oh, nice. Who's your
Yeah.
main?
Ness and Villager.
Oh, yo, me too, me too. Well, I do Lucas and Villager.
Oh
I'll throw
man.
in Isabel sometimes.
Oh, you're a sicko too. That's crazy. Oh
Yeah,
man.
kind of my
Yeah.
philosophy is who's gonna like what character is gonna be the funniest beating up you right now? Or like or
Yeah.
Villager.
He said, "Why is this dog, who's also like what the Secretary of State? Like, what's up with you? Why is she tearing me to bits?" That's the
Yeah.
best. That's a beautiful way to do it.
Yeah, you gotta add the like demoralizing effect to get in their head.
Yeah, right. You just gotta psych them out. Like you're like, I am Captain Falcon. I drive 1,000 miles per hour. I'm getting beat by
And they're
this
charging up the Falcon
child.
Punch, and I'm just throwing a fishing rod.
Yeah, like what? That
I'm
would
like
just psych me out,
planting a tree.
man. Yeah, you get it. You get
Yeah.
it.
Um, you have any sort of like favorite artists that aren't musicians?
Yeah. A lot of my current artists that I've had a lot of focus on would be Hideaki Anno, who made Neon Genesis Evangelion,
Mhm.
a very important anime to just who I am. Um, or I'll just say it's one of my favorites. I've been focusing on a lot of his work, a lot. Excuse me. A lot of that. I guess I guess Larry David. I've been watching Seinfeld, and I'm like, wow, this is some crazy TV. This is some crazy TV. So a lot of that. Um, okay, this artist, okay, Ofamata, he's my homie. He's a visual, like he works in visual art, like painting and
Mm.
oil pastel and the like. And he's killing it right now. Very wonderful, like super crazy images. Like it's so crazy. Um, yeah, when I think about it, just those in the meantime.
Yeah, I've noticed the KWAMZAY covers are very like very nice. Where did those come from? The like
Oh,
cover art.
perfect. Funny enough, okay, Ofamata, he did the Mountain EP cover.
Mm.
So that was the second project. He had done that. And the first one was by Adrian Tew. I hope I'm not butchering his last name. I think it's Adrian Tew. And I believe he's noted for Mavi's Let the Sun Talk album cover. I think
Ooh, that's a nice
that's
one.
what he's noted for. But he made the first Motherland project um, cover. So very much like similar, like we gonna make this like real like just earth toned and like just yeah,
Hmm.
just textured. It's very much that. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there like a is there a process behind that? Did you sort of just like hand them the music and then they give it back, or was it like did they listen to the music beforehand? Were they trying to inspire it through the sound, or is it just matched up well?
I think we might have shown. We might have shown okay the music for Mountain. I don't remember if we showed Adrian for Motherland. We had the songs done though. Like
Hmm.
I think in both cases, excuse me. I think in both cases, the music was done first, and we had just a vibe that we wanted to get off. Like Motherland has, we have basketball jerseys on. Like
Hmm.
you know, it was like stuff like that. Like just specific references to just what we're into. People to understand like what the music is supposed to be. I think
Nice.
I think it's that.
Um, I wanted to touch on this before I forgot. Um, how did the sort of name Kwame Adu like come to be what it is? That's not your real name, is it?
It is.
Oh,
My
okay.
government name is Brandon. My cultural name. My family's from like my family being from where they from. Kwame means that I'm a male who was born on a Saturday. That's just translated from my ethnic group. It's like a system that
Hmm.
they have um, in the Ashanti region or in the Akan even. Um, and then Adu is like one of my grandparents.
Okay.
So it's like that. Yeah. So it's my name in the same way I look at like Brandon being my name. And yeah.
Okay. So, well, I was gonna ask if there's like a lore behind the persona, but I mean, if it's just you, that makes sense. A lot of your music is genuine, and your solo
Yeah.
stuff.
Super me. I used to go by Brandon Masenko, and that was a bit out there. And Masenko being like similar to my last name, and also having a cool like Dragon Ball reference. But I think the more I grew into myself, the more I was willing to see myself for who I was, and that is, you know, that was Kwame Adu.
Nice. Um, maybe for someone that hasn't heard your music before, what would you say would be like 3 to 5 essential songs they should go check out if they want to get a sense of who you are?
Um, I think before this album is out, I'll say Jeanine.
Mhm.
I have a song called Counting Losses from early last year, early 2021. And probably, this is a really good question. Probably prayer. I'm gonna say prayer. I'm gonna say, yeah, Jeanine, counting losses, prayer.
Sweet. But yeah, I'll just do a little outro here. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. I'm Ewan, aka DJ Off Belay. I was here with Kwame Adu for this installment of the Altrap Pipeline Deep Cuts on WKNC 88.1 FM HD1 Raleigh.